Throughout Star Trek, warp drive has not been the only method of attaining faster-than-light travel, and in several instances, technologies have been developed that do not require the use of a warp core, singularity reactor or subspace generator to propel the vessel at all. In this video, we're looking at the Trek technologies that have existed that can catapult a ship into FTL speeds that do not require power from the vessel's end. A soliton wave is simply a wave that retains its form and energy as it travels, and is a real term applied to this phenomena. In the universe of Star Trek, this term was applied to Dr. Jadar's alternative to the warp drive. In effect, the energy ribbon would undulate across space at faster than light speeds and carry with it any object within 2 kilometers of the wave. A series of 23 field coils would generate the wave. As field coils are routinely used to transmit subspace emissions, it's possible the wave is a controlled form of subspace ripple. This wave would be fired off from its starting location, and upon reaching its destination, a countering scattering field would be emitted from the opposing station, dissipating the wave and dropping whatever was riding it out of warp. The wave proved to be 450% more efficient than the warp drive of the USS Enterprise, and reached an initial speed of warp 2.35. However, it produced a subspace distortion at one point which destroyed the test ship, proving that although promising, the wave once underway was difficult to maintain stability. The distortion also accelerated the wave, which began to accumulate energy from subspace and proved a danger to its destination. The advantages of the soliton wave seem to be in its efficiency when compared to a warp core, and the notion that anything could be transported in this fashion. Vessels and cargo could all be transported with little effort, or even entire vessels theoretically could generate their own wave and ride it. This technology was not revisited within the show, but there are practical applications should it become functional. The Caretaker Array was a station created by the Nicene. It was capable of using its powerful Tetryon reactor to generate a displacement wave that could scoop up a vessel and transport it across the galaxy. The nature of this technology was never studied by Starfleet, as Captain Janeway disposed of the array in order to prevent the local Kazon from abusing its power. This wasn't the end of Tetryon-based FTL travel though. In 2376, the USS Voyager then encountered a catapult constructed by Tash. A graviton surge was supplied through a series of emitters that then locked onto a nearby vessel. It would then catapult the vessel into null-space, a realm of space recently discovered by the Federation in 2368, but apparently well known by Tash's species. This dimension had a strange and damaging effect on a vessel's energy grid, sometimes draining, other times overloading it, and was created in temporary pockets. Travel through this null space seemed subject to different laws of reality, and a ship could cover 5,000 light-years in several hours. The similarity in technologies, as observed by a paranoid 7 of 9, led to the conclusion that it was in fact based on the very same Caretaker Array. This proved merely coincidental, but points that perhaps null-space travel was what the Caretaker Array also utilised. The system was developed in both situations by beings outside of the Federation's jurisdiction. The array was destroyed, and the catapult was a one-way trip, although the data gathered could someday be used to replicate the device. The biggest hurdle seems to be the relatively new discovery of null space and the Tetryon reactor, which is advanced even for Federation standards. In the 16th century, while Earth was sailing the seas to map out the globe, the Bajorans were already making sail ships to try to explore their solar system. Ancient tales tell of a time when the Bajorans even reached Cardassia, a feat that would have required FTL travel and something that the Cardassians denounced as even remotely possible. As this feat wasn't recreated for hundreds of years, the truth of this claim was frequently contested. The Bajoran lightship would surf on these solar winds and be propelled throughout the system using its large solar sails. With no engines to provide motivation, such vessels continued to see use until the 22nd century, possibly as recreational ships, as this method of travel was very quiet and a relaxing one. In 2371, Captain Benjamin Sisko replicated a lightship, and during a cruise to the Denorius Belt, the vessel was suddenly propelled into warp speeds. Its trajectory carried it into the Cardassian space, and inadvertently proved that such a feat was indeed possible. The method behind the jump was eventually pinned down to tachyon currents, which flow faster than light themselves. The solar sails and relatively little mass of the lightship meant that the vessel caught these currents and was pulled into warp. There must be more to it than this, however, as if it were a simple acceleration into light speed, then Sisko and Jake would be pancaked from all of the force, with no onboard inertial dampeners. Also, a warp bubble must have somehow been generated to prevent the vessel from succumbing to relativistic effects. Anyway, it was a beautiful ship and a good story, so let's gloss over all that and point out that the speeds attained were nothing special by warp standards, so it makes for more of a curiosity of FTL travel than any true breakthrough in propulsion, meaning it's unlikely to revolutionise warp travel like the hopes of others on this list. Are there any other instances of FTL travel that didn't use any shipside power sources? I couldn't think of any, but I wouldn't be surprised if I missed some. The Vaudois underspace corridors might count, as we see debris within the corridor that obviously doesn't have a power source, but it's also not going anywhere, and I'd argue that a ship needs to traverse the corridor under its own power, so it doesn't quite fit this description. Thanks for watching this video, and until the next one, I've been Rick, thanks again, and goodbye.